What's going on, everybody? Welcome to, I believe this is episode 58 or something like that, somewhere around there, of Quacking Off on YouTube. I'm your host, Spaz, the hostess with the mostest. My co host, Mr. Ben, Exploring with Ben and Sam, is currently unavailable. He's doing the night shift right now, so he's working on the night shift. So I'm just gonna do this, and we're gonna talk a little fall depth. I got a special guest coming on here in just a minute, and we'll get this show rolling. Got any questions, comments? You know what to do. Hit that like and subscribe, and help us grow. We're trying to get to 250 this year. All right. With all that said and done, we will roll that intro. Hey, everybody, there we're back, and I have my guest, KB23 from the East Coast, big Duck fan, also huge lifelong Knicks fan. Finally got to live that dream and raise the championship banner in his elderly days as he's getting out of that youth stage and getting into the prime of his life now. And now he's finally got that NBA title, and he's going to tell us just how your Oregon Ducks are going to do that this fall. KB, welcome in. How you doing?
Doing well, Spaz. Thanks for having me tonight. And like you said, go Knicks. It's definitely a surreal feeling. Still feeling it throughout the entire summer. And like you said, I'm hoping that I got the juju and the juice to pass that from New York City all the way out to Eugene, Oregon.
Yeah, that's the hope this year is that this will be the year this year. And hey, everything's looking good so far. We did have a little bit of a scare last week that literally turned out to be a false alarm, and poor Zachary Neal, he got murdered by people for releasing some stuff that hey, yeah, like he said, it was my sources. You usually trust your sources. That's why they're your sources, especially when you're in the media. And his sources were wrong that time, and unfortunately, they made him the brunt of the joke, I guess, for about 24 hours. But he's a pro. He handled it like a pro, and he even went on a couple of shows and said, "Yeah, made a mistake. It happens. We all make mistakes. If we didn't, we wouldn't be able to learn."
Yeah, that's true. Unfortunately, you came in the crosshairs of the Duck fan base. And like you said, again, it's a tough business to be in because essentially when you're right, everybody loves you. When you're wrong, everybody wants to point fingers at you. So again, he definitely, owned up to it, was a man of his word and was responsible. But again, it's a tough situation. But again, my whole thing is I'm just glad that the scare was just that, a scare, and that we're good to go. Everybody's healthy and we're ready to hit the season running in about 3 weeks' time.
Yeah, definitely. It's gonna be a fun season. I'm super stoked. I went and bought a pair of tickets for the Friday night game, and hopefully, I'm hoping to get another media pass this year, and then I won't have to buy as many tickets. At least for a few games. I'm hoping to get the lower end games. I'm hoping to get Boise State and the UCLA game. The small games. Maybe I'll get Northwestern on Halloween. It's not a real super spendy game, so hopefully not as many people want to get passes for that game, so I'll be able to get one. Time will tell.
Absolutely.
So, uh, tell us, a little bit about your history with Oregon and how you became a Duck fan and all that. I mean, you are an East Coast guy, right? So that does seem kind of strange.
Yeah, it's a peculiar situation to a lot of people because again, a guy from New York City, how does he get connected all the way out to Eugene, Oregon? I mean, as I told Dave a couple weeks ago, Dave Bliss and even Ryan, Sports Chat 503, it all goes back to my younger years. I had a family member that went out to Eugene and they actually got to go see the Prefontaine Classic and they came back with a hoodie. It was a gray Oregon hoodie and they brought it all the way here and the rest was history. It was right around springtime, and I had to wear it. And I didn't care how hot it was or where I was at. I had to make sure that it was on. And it kind of took a life of its own after that. I was like maybe 11 years old, which puts me at about predate myself around 96. So and again, in the East Coast, as you probably know, cable wasn't really big back at that time. So a lot of the subjective television that you've seen was NBC. You've seen a lot of Notre Dame, seen a little bit of Ohio State. Florida State was pumped out a lot and stuff like that. So really didn't get a lot of cable at that time. So it got to be a couple years. And again, after that, I mean, I really didn't care too much for Notre Dame and USC whenever they played, but I just popped off where I got a chance to see a couple of those Pac-10 after dark games, and Oregon was on. And anytime they were on, I was always watching because I had my hoodie, and it was a sight to see. And then again, as we all know, the Joey Harrington year, right around 99, 2000, where the uniforms changed, and it just got my attention, and I was hooked after that. I was done. I think it was the '01 Fiesta Bowl where we beat the hell out of Colorado, and I was like, "Yep, that's my team. I don't care what anyone says. I'm rocking with them to the day I die." So that's pretty much it.
Right on. So you're like myself and pretty avid sports fan because we've had a few chats and spaces and whatnot, and so you've got your college, your pro, you're pretty much into a lot of different sports like myself, and that's where I relate with a lot of people because I'm a sports nut. My wife says it drives her nuts because first thing on in the morning is Sports Center to see what happened the night before, or anything coming relevant, or it's NFL Network or MLB Network or CBS uh, TV for football. Um, I grew up watching like the Alabama Penn State games with Bear Bryant and Joe Paterno running the sidelines, and then it evolved into Kirby Smart and uh, Les Miles, and then Nick Saban, and all these different coaches that were just juggernauts. Um, Schembechler at Michigan, all the different, and Oregon was always such a West Coast packed team that they just didn't get they didn't get the recruits, they didn't get the fandom other than locally, and now over the last 20 years it's like Oregon has really exploded, especially since the 2001 teams.
Absolutely. Like you said, again, I've just been an avid sports fan since growing up in the city. Obviously, as everyone knows, Yankees were pretty much the predominant thing, and baseball was actually my passion. But my father, gave me this round thing called a basketball, and I started bouncing it a little bit and took to it a little bit. And then after that, the sky was the limit. I was, like you said, I was hooked on Sports Center. I was hooked on anything and everything sports. I was almost like an almanac. You could ask me a question, and I can reel it off, and it just took itself to a new heights where I was in high school, same thing. I was an avid sports guy. My friends are looking at me like, this guy's crazy. That's all he does is reel off sports and highlights and things like that. And, one of my favorite college coaches growing up was Bobby Bowden. I like the way that he treated his players. I like the way that he cared about a lot of people. And he was literally one of those coaches that I idolized because, again, you heard so many great stories. And it really, really was a testament to the type of man and the type of person he was. So, again, growing up, he was my idol head coach for football. I loved myself some Bobby Bowden because of the way that he treated us young men and stuff like that. And then obviously being a Knicks fan, with the Pat Rileys and the Jeff Van Gundys and stuff like that of the world, they took me to another level because again, when you're a Knicks fan, yeah, you're gonna love anybody that comes through the door. So I wasn't for me, but again, those were my mainstay coaches and stuff like that growing up as a kid.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see as well. I have my stuff up there. I got my ducks behind me. Over on that wall, I've got all my Cowboys gear, and then directly above me is all my Damian Lillard stuff, my pictures and things like that I have.
Oh, beautiful! I love it. Looks amazing.
So going into this year, I wasn't sure. You talk about Bobby Bowden and some of the uh, great coaches, and Dan Lanning really strikes me as one of those coaches, that it factor, that guy that understands and believes in his kids, but also has that no BS when it comes to on the field. And I believe he said it again the other day. He said, If you're not winning, you're not playing." So if you're not out there with that mindset of winning every down, every snap, whatever it may be, and you don't show that, you're not going to play. You're going to be over there because if if KB's over here sitting on the bench and he's got the hustle and the jive and he's showing it every day in practice, and Junior over here is not, guess what? KB's in and Junior's on the bench, regardless of talent, because KB's putting in the effort and he's showing the coaches and the rest of his teammates that he has that will and that fight and that desire to win. And that's one of the big things I like about Dan Lanning.
Dan came in and he kind of wowed us all. He wasn't a big name. A lot of people didn't know who he was. They kind of had an idea because he was the defensive coordinator down in Georgia. But he came in and he reset the mindset. He got everybody to understand that if you want to win a championship or even just exceed the expectations that you have as a person, you're going to have to get back to the bare bones and basics of what you do best and figure out what type of individual do you want to be. Because again, a lot of people always look at it from a football perspective, but he looks at it from a life perspective. And that's one of the big things that I appreciate about him is because he wants to see them succeed, not just in football, but in life in general. And again, when it comes to this team and it comes to, the last 4 years and what he's been able to do, it's taken off to new heights. I know a lot of people like to say the hoorah of Phil Knight and Nike and all that stuff, but still, at the end of the day, coaching matters, culture matters, and all the money in the world can't win you those football games. It doesn't make you 48-8 just by having the resources. You got to actually go out here and coach individuals, build them up, and make sure that they understand that keep the main thing the main thing. If the goal is to aspire to win a championship, nothing else matters. Focusing ourselves on what the goal is and the task is at hand, and just letting it go after that. So I'm blessed that Dan Lanning is our head coach because again, he definitely came in and he reset the culture, and I think it's been amazing since he's been here since day one. I love having him as our coach.
Yeah, it's really it's totally changed the landscape in Eugene, and the way this fan base has embraced him and taken him in as like one of their own. He's not just sitting there telling us some story just to keep a job or whatnot, or just he. You could tell those guys that are going to be gone in 3 to 5 years. They're just here for the job or for the experience to move to that next level. Um, like the Willie Taggarts and some of those guys that just, came here and were gone. Mark Helfrich, he got fired, but obviously he was going to that next level anyways. um, so I mean, and then you got guys like Mario who came in here, told everybody everything they wanted to hear, started to build a program, and then bounced. But people also got to remember that Mario bounced under different circumstances as well. And people, and especially this Oregon fan base, a lot of them tend to uh, disregard that. Oh, he left us high and dry. Well, he kind of had some reasoning. He had some family reasoning, and there's a difference there. That was the first guy that I really felt might be here for long term, but unfortunately, due to some family medical issues, he decided to go home, and that's understandable.
Absolutely. I mean, Miami is his alma mater. That's home and near dear to him. Like you said, again, there are some circumstances beyond his control. So I can't get mad at him for what he accomplished with us in his time here. Obviously, I would have loved to have him a little bit longer than we have. But again, I can't ever get mad at a personal decision that an individual makes to go home and benefit their family. I would be wrong in saying anything otherwise. So again, I appreciate what he did. Obviously, he gave us a foundation that a lot of people have to be, appreciative of. But again, Dan is taking it to new heights. He's put us on a level that we haven't seen in a while, not just on the field, but off the field as well. Because again, a lot of people like to talk about the resources. Well, we've never recruited at this level. Even when we had Mario, when we had Chip, when we had Mike Balaka, this is not what we're accustomed to. So seeing these amazing recruiting classes and getting these young men to commit to coming all the way out to Eugene, Oregon, and getting out of their comfort zone, that speaks volumes to the type of leadership and culture that Dan has established here in Eugene. And again, we got to be thankful for it.
Yeah, and to me, the biggest one of that probably stands out is the whole Braden Feaster signing uh, last week. I mean, here's a guy from Ohio, born and raised Buckeye, his family, everybody, and this kid just all of a sudden, 6 months ago, everybody was like, "Nah, there's no way he ain't leaving Ohio." Even the pundits and everybody were saying that. I think Oregon had a 17% chance at one point of landing him, and all of a sudden, he comes out on a visit, and the uh, the pendulum swung, and then from then on, it was Eugene.
Oh yeah, I mean, recruiting nationally is definitely where it's at. It's no longer just a pipeline of recruiting. Hey, going to Southern California, obviously Texas and Florida. No, recruiting is a national thing now, and I feel like with what we've established, the way our NIL collective is and stuff like that, clearly we can go anywhere we want to in the country. I mean, obviously I'm here in the East Coast, getting guys like Brandon Finney to come across the country, Nacho, Ife Obadegwu, obviously some of the high school recruits, like you said, Braden Feaster, Brandon Loxley from Philadelphia, like again, guys, Gavin Nix from Florida, Zaire Addison, or even Anthony Jones and Naeem Offord from Alabama, and obviously DeCorian Moore and Dorian Brew and Jalen Lott from Texas. So again, recruiting is just national now. It's no longer just a coast or an actual base. It's wherever you feel comfortable and you can land your feet in, go in there and do the best you can. And like you said, swing for the fences, do what you can. And again, obviously, we're coming out roses because we're getting some high quality guys that want to exceed and excel, and they're landing in our laps here in Eugene.
Yeah. Speaking of Decorian Moore and others, uh, what do you think about our wide receiver room this year? I mean, this is probably the most depth wide receiver and running back room combined that I've seen in probably Oregon history.
The offensive talent that we have mirrors that of what we had in 2014. But I think, like you said, the wide receiver room is probably the best we've ever had it in our entire lifetime. Never in my mind would you ask me 20 years ago would we have a room with this much talent, this much ability to stretch the field, speed, athleticism, just in awe of the room. And I've always said it: if we get those type of guys, the sky is the limit. And I think it's easily one of the top two wide receiver rooms, if not top wide receiver room in the nation. And I have no problem in saying that. It is amazing to see that much talent that Dan and company have put in that primarily that room. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think Oregon and Ohio State are 1A, 1B in receiving room. A lot of people are like on, our trolls over there on Twitter are like, oh, Oregon's. I think I saw you getting into it with somebody about our wide receiver room today or whatnot, where they were saying that Ohio State's far and above Oregon's, or uh, Texas is way better than what Oregon has.
I
It,
mean, they can talk, but like I said, the season's in 3 weeks, and at the end of the day, all this talk that we have really means nothing. They got to go out there and show and prove it. That's why I say, again, I'll do my summer talking. I'll give everybody, what they want to hear and go from there. But like I said, again, once September 5th hits, or even better, once the 29th of August hits, all the words that we say mean nothing because everyone is locked in every single week to see what they're going to do on the field. And like I said, again, the proof is in the pudding at that point.
yeah, and uh, our defensive uh, line room. I mean, just getting Mateo and Mixon and uh, all those all those guys, Addison, everybody, the guys that came back, you know, Dante probably going to be the second pick in the draft. Says no, sour taste. I want to run this back, and getting all those sophomores and juniors that could have been drafted to say no, we're gonna go back to school for one more year at least because we've got unfinished business. They got right there almost to the top of the mountain, but they couldn't get over the top of the mountain. And those guys want to finish that climb up that mountain and climb down the other side as national champs.
Motivation is a hard thing to get away from young people. When they're motivated, they're easily one of the most challenging and difficult people to stop because, again, we all know since Dan has been here, we've gotten better every single year. And again, we all know the two playoff losses have been probably the most
Ugh,
biggest eyesores we've ever seen. But
ugh.
also have to take into account we've actually gotten better and gotten further each year. Yes, they look bad, but at some point, as we all said, at some point you got to get over that hump. Again, I use the analogy as a Knicks fan for 53 years. The Knicks were a challenge to try and get over the hump in the last couple of years, kind of like Oregon. They were getting there, stubbing their toe a little bit, whatever it may be, but they were getting there. And then finally this year they broke through. So I'm looking at Oregon the same way. You're eventually knocking on that door before eventually you kick it down and you can lay claim the fame, the crown that you're looking for. So I'm happy that all those guys came back. I'm glad they committed themselves to achieving that goal and getting us that title. And like I said, I just can't wait to see it every Saturday when they go out there and perform to the best of their ability. It's going to be a show. I can't wait.
Yeah, I just saw earlier where Mateo was doing his post game or not post practice interview today, and he said something about he had muted his dad on all of his social medias because he couldn't he couldn't look at that anymore. He had to focus on what was in front of him and not the hype behind going on behind him and in his ear, and that that's quite a commitment.
The affluence of social media can definitely make or break a lot of these individuals, especially these young 18, 19, 20 year olds who are so fixated on gratification that if they hear it, it sounds great. But obviously, like you said, with the trolls and the naysayers, it can tear you down really quickly. So I actually respect Him and even Dante said it today, of them getting off of social media and completely focusing in and harnessing on the task at hand. Because again, it's going to be a long season. As much as we're excited for it, it's going to be a long road to get from September all the way to January. Should we get to the goals and aspirations we want? That's a long time. But again, with laser sharp focus and giving yourself the full will and determination to get it done, it'll bypass. And like you said, again, people won't pay attention to it. But again, like you said, if he's willing to do that to his dad, then that should tell you, hey, Mateo's locked in and focused on one goal and one goal only, and that's 1 week at a time, getting closer and closer to that illustrious championship. So I'm with it.
So everybody's saying, that goes into a good context there, where a lot of people are saying that, well, Mateo kind of fell off last year to a degree. Do you think some of that could be from the hype and whatnot that everybody was putting on him last year, that maybe in the back of his mind he was a little bit focused on trying to carry that hype that his dad and others were over here saying?
No, I mean, I think for a lot of it, if you go back and look a couple years ago to when we had Jordan Birch, I think he kind of took the Jordan Birch role where he kind of took a step back in order to help, relieve some of the stress and the pressure on the team. Because a lot of people forget Mateo had 10 and a half sacks just a couple years ago. And he was pushing for that Big Ten lead. And now I think he's at 18 and a half now within his seasons here. And again, he has a chance to break the record here. And I mean, I think this is a big year, make or break year for Mateo. And I think he understands that, got his body right, ate the right food, and really went into the training and getting himself right for the season. So I really think, again, I think Mateo's going to have an uptick in production this year. I think he's really going to get after it. And when you have three other guys on that line that are just as hungry as you are, and Amare and Bear and Tatum on the opposite side, I really think we're going to get after it this year. And I like what they said. I like what he said today about destroying the pocket and making sure that they leave a mark every single time the quarterback says hike on the opposite side. Those are motivational words to hear, and I think they're going to show that on September 5th when Boise comes to town. So I really think he's going to have a breakout year, and I think he's ready to go.
Yeah, that when a couple weeks ago when the first lines came out uh, on the Boise State game, it was like 27 and a half, 24 and a half to 27 and a half. And I'm thinking, have any of these people watched the history of Oregon and Boise State? Have they not seen that this game has never been won by more than like 10 points? I think was the biggest margin of victory by either team. It's like, where would they come up with this? And now Oregon's got to be sitting there going, well, we've been these high level uh, picks before, where we've been favored to win by astronomical numbers and whatnot. Does that put a little more on a year like this? Does that put a little more pressure, you think, on these guys to go out there and fulfill those numbers?
I don't think so. Because I think where Dan has us focused, even as he said it today, when it comes to like the preseason AP poll and all that stuff, I think that they've thrown out all those narratives and all that stuff that they say. I think, again, like you said, to your point, we've played Boise 4 times now, and we're 1-3 against them. And like you said, every single time we play the Boise State Broncos, they give us hell. Whether it was the Las Vegas Bowl a couple years ago where we didn't play well, whether it was obviously at Boise where Laguerre, obviously punched the dude. But again, even the last time we played them a couple years ago, it was only a 3-point game, and people forget that Boise State team was a playoff team. We had to return special teams plays in order to beat that team. So again, I don't really
Yeah,
think
field goal on the last play of the game. I was at that game.
37-34, right? Like again,
Yeah,
had to run up one back. Noah Whittington had to run one back, and like you said again, I think the one that Noah ran back, if it wasn't for Jaden Lamar covering the ball in the end zone, that wouldn't have been a touchdown. So again, they play us. They play us tough. They're one of those teams that you can't sleep on. But for numbers wise, I don't think this is the Boise State that they've been in the years past. And obviously, there's a little bit of chatter back and forth, but obviously the coach over there, Danielson, has made a couple comments about us in previous years. So again, I think Dan is just gonna put his foot on the gas from this opening snap, and we're not gonna look back. I think this year's team is gonna be focused and determined to don't play with your food. When it comes time to eat, don't play with your food. Finish it, and then at the end of the game, shake hands, and we're on to the next. But I really don't think we're gonna struggle with Boise. But I don't really think we care about the numbers and the spreads and all that stuff because that's nothing more than just betting odds and people in Vegas trying to just stack their pockets. I don't think we're thinking like that.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I think Oregon's learned from that and uh, from those types of games as well. And Dan has always been ever since that Colorado game. Dan has always been uh, about, oh, you want to talk, all right, you can talk over here for all them clicks you want, but I we're gonna show you what it's all about on the field where it really counts. And that's what you got to have this year. I think he's learned from a coaching aspect of how to get this team right and how to get them over that hump. And uh, this team is so deep. I mean, God forbid something happens and Dante goes down. You've got two veteran quarterbacks now that either one of them can take those reins, whether it be Rayola or whether it be Brock. And Brock was a mystery guy 2 years ago. Nobody even knew who Brock Thomas was, especially here at Oregon, till all of a sudden here comes this guy trotting out onto the field. Who's this guy? And he's gotten better each year. And I think bringing Dylan in also really, hell, I heard and been involved in a lot of back and forth chatter about, oh, he sucked, he was this, he's that. Well, there was a kid named Nix, I believe was his name, that was here a few years ago. Everybody was like, "What's Oregon doing? That kid's a bum. He'll never amount to nothing." And it wasn't for a fluke turn of his foot. Um, he might have won the Super Bowl last year because Denver was pretty dominant. They were a lot better offensively and defensively than New England was last year. And if he doesn't get hurt at the end of that Buffalo game, I think Denver gives Seattle a much better challenge than New England did.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like you said again, it was just a couple years ago, Auburn was ready to write him off. His draft stock had pummeled it. Bo Pix was the name. They gave him a lot of crap, and he gets to Oregon and in 2 years does great job getting himself, reestablished, rebuilding up his draft stock to a point where I think he went 12th overall to Denver. And now you like I said again, he's heralded in high regards because again, like you said, again, if he doesn't break his ankle in that game, we're talking about potential Super Bowl, where it's what a Super Bowl rematch from a couple years ago. And like you said, again, it's anybody's ball game. But I mean, again, it just going back to kind of like Dylan Raiola, so it just speaks volumes to the type of relationship and culture that Dan has established. Because again, people forget Dante was at UCLA, didn't have a great true freshman year. There was a lot going on around him. He had the ability to, take it in, sit a year at Oregon behind Dylan Gabriel, and then hit the ground running last year to the point where he said, you know what? No, I'm not finished. I still got to hone in on my craft. I got to improve on some things. And I think Dylan Raiola, he's not a bad quarterback. I think he's going to take a similar path to, like kind of reestablishing himself, getting his tools in his toolbox right, and he's going to hit the ground running when he gets an opportunity. So again, I just speaks more to the culture and the development that Dan has, but it also the recruiting aspect. Guys that want to come here actually want to be here.
Absolutely, and that's a big difference because years ago, a lot of guys would just go somewhere just because they got the opportunity or the scholarship or whatnot that was offered to them. Now you see guys that if you're not committed to playing, and you're not committed to giving 150% out there on the field, or Oregon's not going to bring you in. Just they're not. We're
You're
we're
character
we're
guys.
not Georgia handing out driving education tickets.
I see today it just matched up with Progressive, and I made a funny meme saying home and auto because clearly, you want to make sure that you're covered. But I know a lot of people, they joke around about certain things and stuff that like that. But again, I think Dan Lanning was the perfect guy for the job for us. And like I said again, we've gone to new heights, and I think we got more in store with Dan and hopefully this year's team. I think we got more in store.
What do you see the toughest? Where do you see the biggest issues with this Oregon team line wise this year?
Obviously, a lot of people have asked kind of question marks. Where do you see ourselves like falling in certain lines where it comes to what is kind of like areas of concern? Obviously, it's going to be offensive line when you only got Poncho coming back, Dave on the line, and then you got new guys coming in like Fox Crater, is going to play. I think that's always a line of concern, but I think we're going to be fine. I think Elite Terry and the law firm do a great job developing young guys to go out there and be prepared. And as Dan always says, if you're good enough, you're old enough. And I think you're going to see a lot of young guys stepping into roles that they didn't have last year or brand new to campus, and they're going to hit the ground running because I truly believe that Elite Terry is going to have these guys up and running and doing well. The obviously other area of concern would be linebacker. When you lose a guy like Bryce Betcher, that's a lot of production to replace. And obviously, you're hearing good stuff about Devin Jackson and his health. Can he be that other linebacker next to Jerry Mixon that kind of mixes it up? That's not afraid to go sideline to sideline. And again, if he's healthy, again, we will get to see a great product that we have on the field. And then finally, what do we look like with the OC and DC? Obviously, with Drew and Chris Hamp, them coming in. I think a lot of people kind of slight them because again, they're not who we used to have, but both of them have been in this position before with obviously Coach Hamp at Tulane and then obviously Drew down in Houston and other areas and stuff like that. He's was I think the youngest OC when he was at Rutgers. Drew Maringer was the youngest OC in college football when he was over in Rutgers. So he has a little bit of experience. He has a little bit of feel, got his feet wet. And I think that's pretty much it of when it comes to lines of concern this year. Offensive line, obviously, the linebacking room, and then what do our coordinators do?
Yeah, special teams too.
Hmm.
I little worried of the kicking game. I hope we're not going back to that Maldonado type mentality with kicking. I sure hope not. Uh, we saw in the spring game there was a couple of good kicks, but also we're seeing that Oregon just for some reason can't seem to get the boot kicker, the guy that could come out there and hit 50, 55 yards,
I mean,
on a nightly basis.
we said the same thing about even Sappington. He had a couple misses early on, but he got it going when we needed him. And like I said again, I always look back at the kick at Iowa, in the rain, with
Huge.
ability to, have the moxie to make that kick. Like I said, kickers get a lot of flack, and I know a lot of people. I forget the young man's name off the top of my head now. I'm drawing a blank. The young man in the Washington game up in Seattle. Like again, it's
Oh,
hard.
yeah.
It's hard to be a consistent kicker, especially in college. But like I said, again, we've had our ups and downs. But I've always said we need to go down to Australia, get one of the Aussies, put them on the pitch, and just let them go. Australia or New Zealand. Those young men have big legs and they can kick. So that's my recruiting pitch. Go down to Australia, get one of those young Aussies, and just let it rip.
The great Aussie JFR, James Ferguson Reynolds, who was on our show last year. He
Okay.
uh he he I'm sure he knows a few Aussies that got a leg like him that can learn to place kick. Maybe he needs to get one of those guys to send him to Dan. Here's a guy, Dan.
Hey, I'm with it. If you need me to go down and make a pitch, I'm more than willing to go down as well and talk. But like I said again, I think that's one area that we can all say that stressed us over the last couple of years is we got to get a damn kicker. one that
Yeah,
we are reliable, because I can tell you the amount of times that we've had our hands in our face and just like, oh my God, how did you miss that? No, we need to get that secured with no doubt in our mind.
yeah. We need a kicker with a leg. That's definitely one of the big areas we need. Uh, where where do you think our toughest game challenges are this year?
I mean, obviously, we're going to see what it's like going to USC in week 4. Obviously, the November game against Ohio State, I probably put that up as our number 1 game. I don't really buy into the whole trap game idea of like obviously that Friday night at Michigan State and stuff like that. But if I had to rank like our toughest games, obviously number 1 being at Ohio State. Our second toughest game would probably be again at USC week 4. And then I'm going to put a third one there, and I think I got a lot of people might not agree with me, but going to Oklahoma State and Stillwater week 2. They are bringing in a lot of new talent. I know we beat the hell out of them last year, but this isn't the same Oklahoma State from last year. And I can see them, kind of giving us a little push early on and stuff like that because Mestermeyer and them, they have some talent. And again, if we're not focused and locked in early on, as we always say, don't play with your food. So again, those are my top 3 games: at Ohio State, at USC, and then obviously at Oklahoma State.
That's funny because that reminds me of week 2 a couple of years ago. Oregon huge favorite over the Idaho Vandals, and they barely pulled that game off. So you're saying that you think Oklahoma State could be that Idaho game from a couple of years ago?
I
That's
think
it.
if we don't come out guns blazing, no pun intended, obviously to the Pokes, but if we don't come out hitting on all strides early and making them work for it, they can throw the ball across the yard, and I have confidence in us. But I never want to give my opponent an opportunity to get off the canvas. If we hit them early, keep them down early, and knock them out, don't give them any life. Because again, if a couple turnovers, a couple plays here and there, teams get confident. And in this day and
Yeah,
age, college football, especially when you have younger teams that, even though we're not necessarily young like that, but teams that aren't used to certain things, it can create a little bit of adversity. And again, just like that Iowa game last year, we didn't expect for Iowa to, play us so tough. Now, obviously, the weather permitting, kind of affected a little bit of that, but they gave us hell from start to finish. I don't want to give Oklahoma State any opportunity. I want to knock them out early and keep them on the campus.
yeah. That was funny because that was 2 weeks in a row. We had the monsoon up here for Wisconsin, and then the next week we played in Iowa City and uh, had to deal with the same effect 2 weeks in a row. Oregon's probably hoping they don't see a lot of rain this year.
Well, we're ducks, so we survive well in the water. So, I think we'll be fine. But I'm definitely with you. It's not something that is ideal and not something that we want to have to deal with again. But like you said, we survived it, we willed it, but let's hope we don't have to do it again.
Yeah, exactly. This I think this is the definitely the most confident that I've been in an Oregon team uh, prior to the season in a long time. I really truly feel that I think one of the things Dan did was he took a page out of Signetti's book from last year, and he talked to the Mateo and Dante and Stu and all those guys after that embarrassing game against Indiana, and he was like, "Well, if we look at what he did here by bringing these guys, having these guys play over and over and over again, and now some of these guys were 5 and 6 year guys and whatnot, and so you went from having a young, inexperienced team to a team of guys that had played together for 2, 3, 4 years, some of them, and guys that had been playing in college for multiple years, maybe in different programs that came into a bigger, stronger program, and it paid off. Experience pays off. And if you have a group of guys that are committed like that have played together, that are like a brotherhood, that's a hard bond to break. And yeah, sure, I could step over here and make 10 million a year, or I could stay here with my brothers that I've created this pack and this bond with and make a couple of million, and we can shock the world and win it all. And I think that's the mentality that I think a lot of these guys on that roster are going into this year.
Oh yeah, I kind of compared a little bit to college basketball. You rarely see those freshmen come in and win national championships right away. Now, obviously, March Madness is a little bit different with college basketball as opposed to college football, but still, the sentiment is still the same. You need veterans in order to come in to help canvas your locker room, help keep guys focused, and then hit the ground running when the time is right. And again, with the way that the NCAA rules are set up and stuff like that, you need savvy vets that can go and help you in certain key moments, even if they're not seeing a lot of snaps or things like that. You need some of the veterans in the room to kind of cool off some of these young guys and kind of help them get through this tough terrain we call a season. Because again, college football is no longer just a 2 or 3 month process. It's about 5 to 6 months from now, getting ready to go to January. And again, with more games, more potential injury and things like that, it's a lot more to worry about. So again, I'd rather go into battle with as many battle tested young men with experience than a bunch of rookies and second year guys that might not have the same ability and mentality of growth as everyone else does. So again, I truly believe this team is battle tested. They have enough veteran savvy on it, and I think again, September 5th. I keep saying it, September 5th. I don't think they're going to hesitate. I don't think they're going to flinch.
No,
I don't think they're going to stop. I'm truly of the belief Dan has us ready to hit the ground running. Day one, play one, ref, blow the whistle, and move out the way.
yeah. And a few years ago, we had a guy named C.J. Verdell. I believe is still running laps around Ohio State linebackers and safeties. I have a feeling this year they're going to have two C.J. Verdells to worry about: Jordan Davidson and De'Aaron Hill, and then a few others behind them as well. Oregon is, I think, more poised this year, depending on what Drew does for play calling. I really hope that this year, especially with the backs we have and the receivers that we have, once this offensive line has a few games together and can figure out, okay, where we're, where we might be a little looser, need to tighten up here or there at. And once they figure that all out, I really hope Oregon just, I hope Maringer airs the ball out this year. I want to see use of those receivers. I don't want to see uh, a 3 yard screen pass or a 5 yard out. I want to see I want to see guys going 30 yards downfield on a on a rub or a hitch and go or a flag or whatever. I want to see that running game open up and become that explosive where now you're not sure. Excuse me. Now you're not sure where you're gonna whether Oregon's gonna run it down your throat or whether they're gonna drop back and throw 40 yards downfield.
Oh yeah, I feel you on that. I will say this much, and I think this is an underlying stat. We actually were one of the top teams in the nation last year in explosive plays. We might not have seen it the same way because we were throwing a lot of screen passes and bubble routes and stuff like that. But we were one of the top, I want to say top three teams in explosives last season. It's an underrated stat that people don't look at. However, I will agree with you. We didn't maximize the potential on the outside. Now, obviously, injuries did play a role with Gary Bryant going down and DeCorian going down. So we had to go 12 personnel a little bit more with two tight ends with Jamari and Sadiq. But again, that's a testament to Dan, reestablishing that room, getting more talent, more young guys in there, more veteran guys like an Iverson Hooks and whatnot, and saying to yourself, again, that year of confidence that we built with the Corian and obviously J Mac and then Eastu coming back. I think we're going to see us open it up a little bit more. And like I said, again, I'm just proud that it's our team and we get to see it all just unravel and come together for us. But again, I'm with you. the offensive line is going to be a key cog to making sure that this offense is as smooth and seamless as possible. Because again, we all know you win games in the trenches. It's offensive line and defensive line.
Defense.
You don't
Yep.
have those areas secure and that foundation. You're gonna be leaking oil for most of the season if you can't get the offensive line or defensive line down.
Yeah, and I really think this year Oregon's defense could lead the nation in points allowed, sacks, hustle plays, turnovers. Uh, I think this team could average, you know, maybe 13, 14 point average a game.
Yeah, if they're truly committed to that and establishing that, then like you said again, it's time to speak it into existence, make it happen. Because like you said again, we know what the talent is. We know that we have depth at all those positions. Now it's time to go out there. If somebody goes down, obviously, God forbid, next man up. But we know what's on. We know what's at stake. We know what's on the line. Now it's up to us whether we want to go ahead and make sure that it happens or not. Because I'm with you. I have full confidence, 1,000% that this team has enough to get it done.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. uh, so, what are your expectations? Are you natty or bust?
I know a lot of people are kind of in that boat. I kind of dipped my toe in the water earlier, and I've kind of wavered early on in the offseason. But after seeing my Knicks win the championship, and then obviously seeing the way that the guys are talking and the way the guys are like in lockstep with each other, obviously the trip to Japan that they had and whatnot, I think it is a national championship or bust. I really do. I think we've created enough buzz and we've seen enough failure over the last 2 years to understand that this team is going to get over the hump. This team wants to get over the hump. They're like you said, they came back for a reason. They're chomping
They're
at the
hungry.
hungry. They're going to play desperate. They're going to play like they understand the task that's at hand. So yes, I am 10 toes down, all the way in on the deep end, fully. This team is not a bust, and I think they have enough again to get it done. It's up to them whether they want to do it or not.
Yeah, 100%. That's the way it is. You making it up for any games this year or any games back there?
I would love to come out to Eugene. It is on my bucket list, given my work schedule with the family and whatnot. I would love to be out there, but unfortunately, I haven't, figured out an overall time to get out there. But it's on my bucket list, and one of the days that I truly wish comes sooner rather than later. As far as East Coast games, I really don't have anything on the slate this year. Obviously, Penn State last year, but living in this area, obviously, unless they come all the way out east, is hard and rare for me to make it to certain games. Like obviously, everyone said, "Would you go to the Ohio State game?" I'm not a big fan of that cold weather over there and stuff like that. In the mid in the early fall or late fall going into wintertime, it gets cold over there. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna wait and pick and choose if I do go to a game here and there. Um, and yeah, just go from there.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm going to be at a few games for sure. Probably going to be at the Boise State game too. I haven't bought my tickets yet, but I'm not worried about that per se. Trying to wait for my media credentials to either come through or not come through, so I know. Well, if I get a season pass, then I'm golden. But I don't expect that. But I'm hoping to at least get uh, once they get the seasonal packs figured out. Then it goes game by game. Then you just have to apply for a pass each game, and I'm hoping to at least get the Boise State, uh, and then the UCLA, and hopefully Nebraska. I don't get why Nebraska is the highest ticket of all the home games. It's like, what? It's more to go to Nebraska game than it is Michigan.
I would think the UW game would be a little bit more just because that's a
Oh,
rivalry.
I could get UW tickets for 75, $80 right now.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know what Nebraska brings and provides to create such a high clientele like that. That's crazy.
The only thing I can think is their travel crew is the way is because their fan base travels kind of like we saw last year with Indiana. I didn't go to the game because I didn't have tickets, but I was there and I was trying to get tickets and I was hanging around doing a lot of the tailgating before the game.
Mhm.
And man, them people travel.
Oh yeah,
And
they have
I
a
knew
they have a
I knew
strong alumni
Indiana. I
base.
knew Indiana was a strong basketball traveling team as far as fan base, but I had no clue their football fan base was as hardcore into it as they were until I met a bunch of them last year.
Hey, Kurt Signetti came in and changed the perception of that program and of that team,
Changed the culture big
and
time.
they hit the ground running after year one. They fully invested, and then obviously year two went to national championship. I can only imagine what it's going to look like for them going forward because they were the losingest program in all of college football for decades, and now you're looking at them talking about Indiana winning a national championship and where they're at. You got to look at them as a
Can
formidable
Indy
foe.
repeat? It's like who'd ever said that?
Yeah, absolutely.
20 years ago, there's no way people would have. You would have said in 20 years, Indiana is going to be the national championship in football. People would have laughed you.
Just 5 years ago, you were looking at them as one of the worst Power Five schools in the history of college football. Just 5 years ago, and now
Yeah,
5 years later, you're looking at them like, oh, they have a chance to, like you said, repeat as a champion. That's some lofty expectations for a program that just hey, it just clicked. They got everything at the right time. Signetti came in and kind of like we said with Dan, established a culture. He established a culture over there, and then again, they hit the ground running. So again, we're looking to create that in Eugene. And like I said, again, I look forward to seeing it every Saturday that we play.
yeah, absolutely. So give me your three hot seat coaches for the year.
Three hot seat coaches. Obviously number one, Lincoln Riley. That's not changing, until they make a playoff and the type of investment that they made. He's number one on the list, and that's not changing. Number two, hot seat coach. I'm gonna go with Dabo Sweeney. What have you done for me lately, Dabo? You haven't really been in the mix for a championship. Little equity and stock with those two championships that you won early on, but you haven't really done much in that time. And I think some of those boosters and some of those people down there in Clemson, South Carolina, kind of getting a little restless. They're getting a little tired of what they're seeing with him and the kind of the talk of what are you going to do to change it. And I think he's got to show them something. And then I think finally, you know, probably Steve Sarkisian in Texas. They invested kind of like a lot of teams. They invested a lot of marquee finances into getting that team to where they're at, and they complained a lot about not making the playoffs last year. They bring in a lot of talent. Archer's supposed to have another year of experience under their belt, and if they can't get it done now, kind of like what people will say about us, if not now, when? So those are my three hot seat coaches: Lincoln, Dabo, and Sark.
Yeah, so if hypothetical Oregon goes down to LA and beats USC by 15,
Hmm.
and does that put a and now they've still got to play Ohio State, they've still got to play Indiana, Washington. Does that does that put an added pressure to the point of does that put him on their legitimate hot seat at that point, do you think?
I don't think it puts him necessarily on the hot seat like that, because again, a two score game is not going to completely put him in that, but it puts more eyes on the alumni base and the boosters to say, hey, this guy's losing games. We still got a long season to go because again, the Oregon game was hit within the first month of the season. Then on top of that, the game right after that, you host Washington. Like you said, again, Halloween night, you bring in Ohio State. Still got to go to Indiana, but you also have another tricky game in playing at Penn State. Again, it can snowball really quickly. I won't say that the Oregon game is the end all be all, but if we go out and handle our business, it could get very catastrophic for them if it snowballs out of hand. If it goes beyond that. And then on top of that, they got the game at the end of the year against UCLA, that crosstown rival. I know they've been beating up on little brother for a while, but I don't think this is last year's UCLA team. I think they're a lot better. I think Chesney is a better coach, and they're going to give them a fight. They might not win, but they're going to push them to their limit. And I think, again, if things don't go well, it will snowball really quickly, and it's going to put a lot of doubt in those boosters' minds. Like, hey, we paid all this big money for this guy, a fully guaranteed contract, $100 million over 10 years, and we're halfway through. Where's the real return on investment here?
Yeah, and they that Oregon game, as Penn State found out last year, that could be the trickle down effect to an implosion in Los Angeles, like they had at Penn State last year, because that game broke Penn State. That
Oh, it
broke James
definitely did.
Franklin.
It definitely did. The wheels started spiraling after that because, again, after that they went out to UCLA, they lost. Then they came home the very next weekend for homecoming, and they lost to Northwestern. And then at that point, they was at the point of no return. So if something like that happens where they lose to us at home, they somehow lose to Washington the next week at home, and then obviously the losses pile up of obviously Ohio State, Indiana, and then obviously potentially UCLA. Yeah, then there's going to be conversations to have because now you're regressing. And I can say that since he got there year one, they've kind of regressed every single year and they haven't gotten better. But again, I'm hearing a lot of good stuff from them. Obviously Gary Patterson coming in to keep the defensive stuff going. And we all know Lincoln is a quarterback whisperer. You got Mayava, who's not bad. He's a pretty decent top five, or excuse me, top 10 quarterback. We'll see what they do. They have high expectations out there in LA, so we'll see what they do.
Right on. So, one final pick. Does Dante Moore win the Heisman this year?
Does Dante Moore win the Heisman this year? I know a lot of fans won't agree with me when I say this, but I don't think he's going to win the Heisman. I think he's going to be in the Heisman finalists, but I don't think he's going to win the Heisman. I think in order for Dante to win the Heisman, he's going to have to shore up and clean up a lot of those stuff that we've seen in the Indiana games and whatnot, and just take it over the top where obviously the numbers look good, and he's kind of shored up and cleaned up a lot of stuff. But if I had to say right now today, do I think Dante's going to win the Heisman? I'm going to have to go against the grain of what our fan base was saying and say probably not.
Yeah, I agree. I think he'll be final. He could be potentially a finalist, but I think Oregon has the potential to have 1,000 yard uh, runner and one or two possibly 1,000 yard receivers if they if the if the chips fall right. There could be some big offensive numbers this year.
I think Dan and Dante and them would take the high number stats and helping them compete to win a championship over a potential Heisman and things like that. Because again, ultimately, we know at the end of the day, we're not in it for a Heisman. We got one of those, and it wouldn't be bad if Dante won it. But we're out for bigger and better than that. We're out for the highest team goal possible. We know we've seen the highest individual goal possible in college. Now it's time to get the highest team goal.
Absolutely. Well, hey, KB, thanks for coming on tonight and chatting with us and giving us a little bit about your background and being a duck all the way out there in New York land. And stay safe out there. And one of these days we'll get to a game.
Absolutely. Again, I always tell everybody, getting out to Eugene is indeed on the bucket list. The wife and I, got to figure certain things out. But again, we want to definitely get out there, catch up with the beautiful fan base that we have, and like I said, again, just chop it up and enjoy our ducks all together.
Yeah. So one final thing with the Knicks winning last year, what what do you think was the biggest catalyst? Do you think bringing Mike Brown in was the culture change that helped push that team over the edge to win?
I think for the Knicks, it was a lot of psychological, as we kind of see with our Oregon Ducks. Obviously, it's all psychological. He gave them confidence space that Tom Thibodeau kind of didn't have, and he gave the players the freedom to kind of adapt to understand that what worked previously might not work this time. Now, obviously, health does play a role because, again, there were some key guys that got hurt on previous year's runs, but the Knicks were fairly healthy this year. But he gave them the open insight to understand, hey, you might have to change some things and change the way that you have your game and your philosophy. And I think for like Oregon and obviously Dan Lanning, changing the way that certain things are done, keeping the same fire and intensity, but changing the way that you do certain things, changing your prep a little bit, changing the way that you get yourself in game, changing certain strategies and things like that. But just making sure that if the goal is to win a championship, kind of like the Knicks did, keep that your main goal and don't let anything veer you off of the track. Because a lot of people said, obviously, when the Knicks had a early spiral of losses in January, oh, this team isn't going to compete for a championship. But the course, they maintained their level of consistency, and then they were the best version of themselves later in the season as they got to the playoffs. So I think kind of with Oregon, again, just stay the course. Don't let things veer you off the track. And when it comes time for playoffs, show that you belong. Show that you're willing to compete and show that you can do the best that you can and go out there and get the championship.
Yeah, exactly. Well, again, hey, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it, and have you on later during the season, maybe as well, and see where we're at during the season.
Absolutely. Like I said, thank you for having me this evening. Like I said, again, enjoy these spaces with fellow Duck fans and enjoying the beautiful talk of not just the Ducks, but sports in general. And like I said, again, September 5th can't get here soon enough because
No,
I am
I'm
on
ready.
100, ready to go. As you see me every day, I'm talking, I'm engaged, I'm ready to go. This season needs to get here now.
Yes, absolutely. All right, man. Well, thanks again, and I appreciate you coming on, and we'll we'll get out of here with a little bit of college football airtime that we got here. Hope you guys enjoy this, and stay tuned. And KB, I'll see you backstage here in just a minute.
All righty, go Ducks.
Every week your team sucks.
Oh, yeah.
Every week your team sucks. Every week we let you know we are here to make fun of you. The After Dark Show is upon you. The After Dark Show is upon you. Every week your team sucks. Every week we let you know we are here to make fun of you. Every week your team sucks.
And we're out.
Oh, yeah.
Come on. Why are you not? There we go.